Hey guys, how you doing? It's KJ here from the scariest movie ever made and riggedreality.com. Hey, we're gonna explore David Icke a little bit today. We're gonna explore good guys and bad guys. All right, and the line is usually blurred, So we're gonna get into some of that. And to start with, what you're looking at there is a picture of John D. Rockefeller. All right. Of the famous Rockefeller family. Most people in conspiracy circles know this is a family. If you do a little research, guys, if you're not familiar with the Rockefellers, but they basically control everything. This is one of the families at the very top, one of the elite families, Illuminati families. Definitely at the top of the pyramid, so check out the Rockefellers, and I'm going to show you something kind of interesting here. So there's John D. Rockefeller, and hey, wait. Who's this? What's that? Whoa! Yeah. Kind of looked like David Icke there for a second, didn't it? And there it is again. It's David Icke. David Icke and John D. Rockefeller. There's a conspiracy you may not have heard of. But are they related? We're going to get more into some David Icke here in just a second, because that's what the whole video is about here. Is David Icke, is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? Is he COINTEL? Is he controlled opposition? David Icke, good guy or a bad guy? Well, I'll tell you, anyone who has their awakening into this kind of stuff, eventually you'll find David Icke. He's, I guess at this point, the grandfather of many of these conspiracies. He's been around for a while. He started off out in England as a footballer. I guess he was fairly famous at that. Then he became a newscaster. Then after that, he had some kind of a spiritual awakening and started writing a bunch of books and started coming out and talking about the reptilians, the reptilian aliens that were actually in charge of the world and that were here before anybody else and, wrote the Bible and all this other good stuff, right? Well, that was always my issue with David Icke, He's one of these guys that, gives out a lot of truth. But when you get to that reptilian stuff, it always kind of stopped me dead in my tracks. There's always something about it that didn't ring true. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. There's a lot of people out there that feel that way about David Icke. And, and even with his pronunciation, you may call it Icky or Ick or whatever. I call it David Icke. I don't know, I could be wrong. Either way, we'll go with that for the video. But David Icke, alright, so yeah. So with the reptilian stuff and all that, like I said, it always kind of turned me off. I believe they're tares. I believe it's from the Bible, right? And that these are more demonic entities or fallen angels here on Earth, inhabiting people's bodies. Of course, there's connections to the Illuminati bloodlines and all that as well. But I don't think these are space aliens from Mars and the moon and all this other stuff. And I think that's where David Icke, I think that's where his disinfo comes from, and I know that's going to upset a lot of people. He's got rabid followers, kind of like Ron Paul, I've noticed. Ron Paul has got these rabid followers, It's almost like these guys have their own, little religious cults, the way I look at it. And that's no offense to Ron Paul fans either, or anything like that, but I think I've mentioned in other videos, I'm just not much of a joiner. I don't trust many people at the forefront of any movement. I always feel that to some level they're controlled, And I don't think we should put that much stock in other men or women for that matter. I don't think we need to have leaders like this. I believe in being your own leader, and also if you're going to put your faith into something, put it into your God, Put it into Christ, put it into, whatever you're following, but put it more into the spiritual side of things. And stop giving all your trust to these men and women out there who are, ultimately just going to mislead you, So again, back to the David Icke thing, is he a good guy or a bad guy? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell who the real bad guys are, right? And just look at it, look at it through movies. Look at all the movies you go watch or TV shows. Look at the way we've been conditioned. How do they show us good guys and bad guys? Well, the bad guy is always pretty obvious. Usually, evil mustache or scar across their face, or, you know, some kind of a deformity, or always wearing black, or, you know what I mean? I mean, if you look at it throughout your whole life, all the movies and TV shows you've seen, the bad guy is always very obvious. It's always an obvious bad guy, you know? But in real life, it's not like that. In real life, bad guys don't all come off looking like bad guys. In real life, bad guys come off looking like good guys a lot of the time. I mean, look at a lot of these serial killer stories that come out, like you know, Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, some of these famous ones. Every time they talk to their neighbors or people that knew him, it's always like, oh, he was the sweetest guy, you know, he was such a good dude, you know, he was always saying hi, and, you know, he pet my puppy every time he walked by. I mean, the whole thing, you know. So again, guys, I mean, you know, bad guys can look like good guys too. And some of the greatest deceptions come with 80% truth, maybe 90% truth, and just that 20 or 10% deception, right? So it's kind of what we're going to get into here just a little bit with David Icke. And really what kind of started this for me is, I don't know if you guys have heard of her or not, but it's Arizona Wilder. So again, the deeper you get into some of these conspiracy-related videos or whatnot, and the further you fall down the rabbit hole, you're going to find her name. And you'll find an interview she did with David Icke called Revelations of the Mother Goddess. And Arizona's story is pretty long and complicated, but in short, she's a victim, a lifelong victim of satanic ritual abuse. She got hooked up with David Icke somehow, and they wound up doing this really long interview. You can find it on YouTube. David Icke and Arizona Wilder, or even Revelations of the Mother Goddess. And they did this long interview and became pretty famous. She ran around in some of the conspiracy conventions there for a while, and, you know, was doing some interviews and really laying down some pretty hardcore information, you know, about satanic ritual abuse. And a lot of what she was saying adds up to many of the books I've read on the subject, and many of the information a lot of you guys have had access to. You're going to see that she's not lying about a lot of this stuff. But then it got a little weird, you know. Then it got a little weird. We're going to get to that in a second, but let me go ahead and show you a quick clip of this interview between David Icke and Arizona Wilder before we get started. Here you go.
Being brought up in this Illuminati environment, were you ever told anything about where these reptilians came from, and what is the history of it all?
I was made to learn through Mothers of Darkness, which is a certain aspect of the organization, because that was an early part of my training, the history of what was the Illuminati on this planet. And what I learned was that the Aryans originally were from Mars, and the reptilians came to that planet they came from another place. They came to that planet. They came to rule because they wanted to mix, so they said, with that race. And but they became the overlords. And the Martians or Aryans were seeking to escape from it. They went to the moon, and then were there attacked, and they then went to Earth and established culture here on Earth approximately 6,000 years ago. And at that point in time, they were doing well, and they were mixing with the indigenous population of this Earth. They were getting along with. And then about 4,000 years ago, the reptilians arrived here and again began to take over, and they instilled themselves in different places underground in the Earth, and also this one part of them, the ruling part, took over and became involved in the politics and in the religion, and started controlling through these means at that point in time, and using the gods and deities that were believed in on this planet, started infiltrating into that and becoming that. And things started, blood rituals started happening. And since that time, that is the way that it has been.
So there's just a little bit of the interview right there, guys, and I'll leave a link below for the full interview if you'd like to check it out. It's pretty fascinating. I mean, she really drops a lot of information on satanic ritual abuse and you know, her role in it, you know, what the role she played ever since she was very young, and that's the way this stuff works. Do a little research for yourself, guys. Research some Fritz Springmeier. Check out Svali, S-V-A-L-I, on YouTube. Check out things like that, and you're going to get a little more information and background on satanic ritual abuse and how real it really is. You know, how it starts with the very young, you know, with families, with children, and goes from there. So Arizona truly is a victim, and I believe she's being further victimized by David Icke. And I know that's going to piss some people off. You know, I know David Icke is, again, he's got a huge following, you know. But, you know, anybody who says they're a truther, you know, I think they need to be put under the spotlight as well. I mean, if we're really searching for truth, we got to really dig for it, right? And let's find the truth on everybody and on everything. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. You know, I'm not trying to pee on your parade or anything here, but, you know, I've read a lot of David Icke myself, you know, when I first started off into all this stuff. But, you know, it gets deeper. And, like I said, we're going to go with that right now. So, you know, what are we looking at here? Well, what are we looking at? Well, that's Kanye West from one of his music videos. And, of course, there's tons of Illuminati symbolism and Freemason symbolism. You can spot tons of things right there if you're in the know on this kind of stuff. But what you're actually looking at is Arizona Wilder's, well, right here, her fan club Facebook page, but they go by Arizona Wilder on there, right? So I'm sure it's a little misleading, but that's how the whole story started for me, is I was actually checking this out. I've always been very fascinated with Arizona Wilder, ever since I saw her interview with David Icke many, many years ago, and some of the other videos she's done as well. She hadn't done much, but after she did a few interviews here and there and a few videos were made of her, she just kind of dropped off the face of the earth, disappeared for a long time. So not long ago I was asking myself, you know, what happened to Arizona Wilder? So I started doing some digging, and it brought me here. And let me go and show you what I found, and I thought this is kind of interesting. So I found this message here from Megan Russell, maybe a friend of Arizona Wilder's, I'm not sure, but we'll get into that in a second. But here's her message to the fanbook page. It says, if you like her so much, why can't you at least use a better picture of her? And, given that this type of stuff is no longer a part of her life, as she said in an earlier posting on here, why can't you respect her wishes? So the Arizona Wilder person responds a few times, but I was really more interested in this from Megan Russell right here. It says, please note that I made the above post over 3 weeks ago. She does not deny what she said in the past. It's just that she's not there anymore. You've posted a couple of her links from the Anti-New World Order site. That's where you'll find out what's happening in her life now. What would it take for you to believe the posting from her Facebook page? As I said before, she opened a Facebook account just so she could leave a message on your page. She didn't even know this fan page existed until I found out and I mentioned it to her. She could see her message on your page, but I couldn't. That's why I copied and pasted her message from her site to yours. I think it was January 27th. Yes, you can post whatever you like. If you'll take the time to read her postings on the Anti-New World Order site, you'll see she's still working on exposing the powers that be, just not from the perspective as her Arizona Wilder days. Interesting, right? You're probably wondering, what's this message she posted? Well,